Hello everybody and welcome back to the Train Brothers Railway. Today is part 2 of our RailPro installation on this Canadian National Alco S4 switcher, and today we're going to get everything prepped to mount the LEDs. So first steps first is to take all these breakable accessories off and make sure that we keep a good tally of what everything is and where everything goes. And then this here is a miter saw box that I put a nice fluffy towel into. So when we flip the train upside down, we will be able to safely work on it upside down. But pretty much you want to take all these handrails off. You want to have the train pretty much stripped right down to the body so that nothing can come off or break. And I'm going to get that all done and set up because it kind of needs two hands. We'll flip it around and I'll show you what you guys got to take apart. Okay, so we have all the handrails stripped off. And something to note, just to make sure that you have everything, is this part here is the body, this part here is the chassis. So anything kind of separating those two lines, you want to take off. There was a bunch of handrails here that were attaching the cab to the stairs. We wanted to make sure we removed all that. We took off the smokestack. There was a ladder here that we had previously taken off that you want to make sure you take off and just get everything ready to be able to take all the body screws out. Okay, so this is the train, the locomotive flipped upside down. We have our KDs that we added last year. These are our pickup shoes. These are our trucks. This whole thing is called the truck. These are the pickup shoes that take the electrical power to the inside of the locomotive. These are the wires. Once again, I'm going to say pictures are your best friend, because if you mess these motor wires up, then your train or one truck might be running forward and one truck might be running backwards. So you do need to keep the order for that for the new installation. And in order to get the body off, you need to be able to gain access to these screws here, right there through that little hole. So that means that these trucks got to come off so we can make room. So that's what we're going to do next. All right, so we have the trucks taken off. You had to loosen 3 screws right there, which takes the side of the truck off. Then you can get these motor blocks out, 1 and 2. Notice the pickup wheels, they'll be noted later on. So there's the wires right there. This is where we take detailed pictures and make sure that we know where everything's going and figure out where those wires are going. Now don't worry, this may all look a little daunting at first, but once you get into it and you kind of understand how they all work, it's pretty simple. As long as you take good pictures, I think you'll be fine. So we're going to take these trucks off and then get to these body screws. Those 2 there. And then there's 2 there, and then as it goes down the line, they're all there. So we're going to take that apart and we'll show you guys the inside. Okay, so here's our first little tidbit. Notice these wires here are all black. This guy here, they're all black except for one. There's one red one, the one there. So we don't quite know what's going on yet until we get into the train. So we've labeled the back motor block and the front motor block, just to keep everything straight, just in case they're specific for front and back. I don't think they are, but it's just better to be safe than sorry. Okay, so we've got all the body posts or body screws out. There was 4 smaller ones for the cab, and then there was, I believe, 4 or 5 other ones for there. Quick tip, magnetic tray or tin or cup or something to keep all your screws together. Right here we've separated them so we know that this is for the trucks, and this is all for the body. This is for the cab screws, this is for the body screws. And then just the smokestack, it holds all your small pieces. Very useful and handy. And the reveal of what is inside this Alco S4 switcher. This is actually pretty simple compared to some of the other locomotives we've had with the dual smoke units. But I'll run through what you guys are looking at right now and kind of how everything is laid out. So first and foremost, the reason why these trains can pull these cars is because of the weight. The more weight you add, theoretically, if your motor blocks can hold it, the more your locomotive can pull. 1, 2 weights. This wire here is going to the interior cab light, and there's probably going to be some type of board up there because you have a backlight as well. There's your little door. That's that. And then in here you have a fan-driven smoke unit with your smoke board right in there. That's what your board looks like. Slightly maybe daunting, but I wouldn't worry about it. So one of these wires runs to the little N20 motor that runs the fan. The other one runs the resistor that actually makes the smoke, and then the other one's power there. Useful for doing smoke boards, or make sure you note this for when we go to hook it up. I don't think we're going to hook the smoke unit up in this one, but we haven't really decided yet. Then over here at the front of the locomotive, we have the board for the lights. So we have number boards on the left and right, and then in the center there is the directional light. And that's why there's 3 wires there, because it tells one for power, one for common, one for whatever function is being used. Now this one here, we haven't decided how many functions we're going to go through yet, but the number boards could be one function, and the direction of the directional light could be another function. And then we also have that grate, which you see on the top. This is kind of where we're hoping to be able to mount the speaker because of the louvered sides there, that the sound will be able to come out, but we don't know yet. And then if we go back onto the actual chassis of the locomotive, we have the main board. Under here are all the switches for the functions if it was track powered. I think you might be able to see that, where it says smoke, sound, lights. This is the main board. These plugs here come in from down below, which was those wires I was talking to you about. So this is kind of the main wiring harness. Same as this guy here, I believe. And then same goes for the second truck as well. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. So we're going to get this all stripped out, and we're going to get ready to mount LED lights. Okay, so we've unplugged all the wires going down to the trucks, both front and back. So the only thing that we have left now is just this board. So all we're going to do is take out these 3 screws, and then you can either keep the board or throw it out, depends on how committed you are. But I would recommend keeping all your original parts, just in case you want to sell the locomotive down the road. You can always convert it back. But we've disassembled all the wires going to the cab and the main engine house. So that's now 3 different pieces that the train's into, and it makes it a lot easier to work on. Okay, so I've taken the main circuit board out of the locomotive. I flipped this back around because I want to show you guys a kind of a critical point, and I'm going to go over this again in a later video when we go to actually hook up the motors. But one thing to really make sure is that this locomotive was track powered beforehand, which means that these pickup shoes were supplying power from the rails back to this guy right here, and then from here this would tell it what to do and what speed to go at the motors. But we need to make sure that we opened up the motor block. It's not as daunting as it looks. This is what it looks like. Grease, not a bad idea. While we're in here, we're going to grease these gears, make sure that they're all nicely lubricated. But we need to make sure that we remove these pickup shoes so that no electricity from the rails, if we were to ever run a track powered layout or a track powered locomotive and a rail and a battery powered one, they would never mix, because you can never double feed that board, because that would be a very expensive mistake. So it's just as simple as taking those out, and then you're good to go. As well, now, so there's 4 pins on there. You won't need to use all 4 pins, because you don't need to redo these wires here. Those wires no longer need to go back on. Just the wire right here that supplies power to the motor. So another thing you can do is right here, go ahead and clip that off, because you won't need it, because it also picks up power from the wheels with these wipers, and it supplies power to the circuit board, but you can cut that off. Now, I would recommend cutting it where I did, right there, so if you ever want to attach it again, you still have lots of length to be able to solder it back on. It's just keep kind of future-proofing or keeping your options open, but that's how you disconnect the power from the track power to the board to make sure that it's electrically insulated, because you never want to double feed the board. And I will go over this again, so don't worry if you guys are confused. It takes a minute to understand where the electricity is flowing to and going to, but it's not a huge deal. And I'll go through it one more time when we go to hook up the power to the board, or to these motors from the RailPro board. And one last point I want to make about these motor blocks is this is the plug that we were talking about that's inside the locomotive, and they run to this board. So there's other 2 options you can do. You need the female ends to connect to the new RailPro board, So you can either buy these plugs off of Amazon, which is what we're going to do, or you can carefully cut them out of this board and then just solder them onto the new functions of the RailPro board itself. But that's one of the two options that you have to do, because I suppose you could cut these plugs off and then just solder new wires right to this to connect right into the 4-pin plugs there. So there's a couple options that you can do with this. You don't necessarily need the plugs, but it is nice just in case you want to unplug the motor blocks. Okay, so I unburied these guys from inside the cab here, and we removed two screws that removed this. This did the directional LED, which these are LEDs, but they're the 3mm. We're thinking we want to go to 5, but we'll let you guys know what we end up doing. This one here is a 5mm. I think this one's a bulb. Yeah, this one's a bulb. So this goes into this little board for functions. This we no longer need, because we will probably just end up hot gluing a new 5mm LED. These are the ones with the resistors already built in. You can see the bump there, so you know that this guy has a resistor. This one is the warm white LED light, that's 5mm, and then we'll just run it down through that channel there, all the way around to the inside of the locomotive, and then there's this nice little trim piece that'll cover the wires. So that part there is for the cab, and we'll show you guys all the mounting of the LED lights as well. Okay, so now we have the main body here of the locomotive, and I ended up taking out these louvers here just so, one, I could show you guys a little bit better on how this was mounted, and two, it'll make it a lot easier to put these lights in. So this here was the, I guess, module type of circuit board that held these on. The number board lights were like an orange, which would explain why we couldn't really see them very bright at all. And then this is the 3mm LED light. That was the directional light. Also probably going to go to 5mm just to make it a little bit brighter. But the one issue we might have is trying to get it in there. So as you can see, the slot, the LED went in the hole there, and then the wires sat in the slot. And I don't know if this was from USA Trains. I've never seen it in all of our other ones, but they use that kind of like foil metal tape, which makes sense because it keeps it keeps it brighter in there. It keeps the light in there, I should say. So we don't know what we're going to do with that. I'm going to try to go to 5 because I like them nice and bright, but if not, we do have 3mm on hand that we can slip in there. I'll let you guys know what we decide to do. And then for this smoke board, we're probably not going to use the smoke for a couple of reasons. One, this one's not very strong. We did buy this train secondhand, and it's kind of burnt out there, so it doesn't smoke very well. Two, we're probably going to put that switch there for the on-off charge switch. And three, it sucks a lot of your battery power if you have it on. And plus, you have to stop and refill smoke fluid so often. So I'm just going to leave this in for now, and we'll see what happens. But if we do end up putting the switch there, then all this will come out, which is just 4 screws. So it's nice and simple. Well, everybody, there you have it. We have now totally stripped down the train. It has 0 electronics in it, and we've got everything pulled apart, ready to mount the LED lights. I've already started pulling out some of the track power pickups to switch to the battery power. We have our nice bundle and rat's nest of all of our old electronics. Surprisingly enough, you could still use all this stuff, so I would definitely recommend keeping it, bagging it, tagging it, just to make sure that you know what everything's for. Over here, we have some accessories. The screws, I've kind of piled them so I know which piles are where. And of course, we have our LED lights that we're ready to mount, which will be the next installment of the video. We'll try and keep these guys to a minimum. We don't want to make the videos too long. But there you have it. That's what the train looks like apart on the bench. So we'll until next time, guys, we'll see you later. Take care, take it easy, and keep it on the rails.